All right, Dorothy.
275.
275. Howard.
220.
220.
It looked like the kind of moment television lives for. Bright lights flooded the stage. The audience was already on its feet. A contestant stood frozen between disbelief and joy, hands trembling as she released the chip. It dropped cleanly, then another, then another. Each one landed exactly where it shouldn't have. The odds were absurd. The crowd didn't care. They screamed louder with every bounce, feeding off the feeling that they were witnessing something historic. For a brief second, it felt like magic, like the universe had chosen this one person, this one moment, to bend the rules. Cameras zoomed in, applause drowned out everything else. History was unfolding live. And then, everything stopped. A hand suddenly reached into the frame. The chip vanished mid-air. The music cut off so sharply it felt violent. The audience fell silent, confusion replacing excitement in an instant. No one laughed. No one clapped. People just stared at the stage, trying to understand what they had just seen. This wasn't a commercial break. This wasn't part of the game. Someone had just shut down one of the most trusted shows on American television, live, without warning, in front of everyone. Behind the smiling set and colorful lights, panic spread fast. Producers leaned in close, whispering urgently. Cameras powered down. Contestants were quietly moved away from the stage without explanation. Every second that passed made the silence heavier. What viewers at home would never know is that this single interruption nearly unraveled decades of carefully built trust. Because this show wasn't just entertainment, it was designed to feel fair, safe, honest. And when honesty is questioned, especially on live television, the consequences can be devastating. That interruption wasn't random. It was fear. Fear of history repeating itself, fear of investigations, fear of losing everything. To understand why that moment mattered so much, you have to go back, long before spinning wheels, long before catchphrases, back to a time when game shows nearly destroyed themselves and took public trust with them. The original idea wasn't flashy, it wasn't even ambitious. There were no grand promises, no complex rules, no massive prizes meant to overwhelm the audience. It was simple. What if regular people guessed the price of everyday items? That single question became the foundation of something quietly revolutionary. At a time when television was filled with scripted drama, exaggerated personalities, and rigid formats, this concept felt different. It felt real. It felt familiar. It felt honest. You didn't need trivia knowledge. You didn't need strategy. You didn't need to outsmart anyone. You just needed life experience. Groceries, appliances, furniture, things people bought every week, things they argued about at the store, things they compared prices on without even thinking. Suddenly, everyone watching at home could play along. Everyone felt included. That simplicity wasn't accidental. It was protection. Behind the scenes, television executives already understood something dangerous. When money enters entertainment, temptation follows. Earlier game shows relied on knowledge, memory, and intelligence, and knowledge could be controlled, answers could be fed, outcomes could be shaped. This one couldn't. You either knew the price or you didn't. There was no script for that, no shortcut, no easy way to manipulate the outcome without being obvious. That's why audiences trusted it, and that trust slowly turned into loyalty. While other shows relied on spectacle and pressure, this one relied on restraint. No dramatic lighting tricks, no sudden rule changes, no surprise twists. Just one rule that never changed: don't go over. As scandals began tearing through the industry, this format quietly survived, not because it was lucky, but because it was clean. That reputation would protect the show for decades.
But it would also make future mistakes far more dangerous, because when a show brands itself as fair, even the smallest crack can feel like betrayal, and those cracks were already forming, long before anyone noticed. In the late 1950s, television faced a reckoning it couldn't escape. What had once felt exciting and unpredictable suddenly looked manufactured. Contestants weren't just winning, They were being coached. Answers were quietly handed over. Outcomes were planned long before cameras rolled. And when viewers began to realize what was happening, the reaction was swift and brutal. People felt lied to. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't come gently. Congress stepped in. Hearings were held. Networks scrambled to protect themselves. Careers that had taken decades to build collapsed almost overnight. Shows that once dominated prime time vanished without warning. Sponsors pulled their money. Audiences turned away in anger and disappointment. It wasn't just entertainment that suffered, it was credibility. Television, as a medium, lost something vital: trust. That's why one particular show stood apart. While others were exposed, this one remained untouched. No leaked answers, no suspicious winners, no whispers of manipulation behind the scenes. Its survival wasn't luck, it was design. By focusing on prices instead of knowledge, it avoided the very loopholes that destroyed everything else. It didn't need experts or prodigies, it needed shoppers. Regular people making regular guesses. There was nothing to memorize and nothing to rig without being obvious. In an industry drowning in scandal, that honesty became rare. Audiences clung to it. While trust in television collapsed, this show quietly grew stronger. It became familiar, comforting, reliable, a daily ritual people could still believe in. But safety has a downside. It breeds complacency. And over time, comfort can blind even the most careful teams. Because the longer something runs without scandal, the easier it becomes to assume nothing could ever go wrong. That assumption would eventually be tested, brutally. When the show returned years later, it wasn't the same, and that was intentional. The tone shifted immediately. The pacing tightened. The energy exploded off the screen. This version didn't just invite people to play, it invited them to celebrate. The set was brighter, the audience louder, reactions were bigger, raw, and impossible to ignore. Every moment felt alive, unpredictable, and that feeling pulled viewers in. Then came 3 words that changed everything. Come on down. Instant chaos. People screamed, they cried, they hugged strangers. Some ran, others froze in disbelief. For the first time, game show excitement felt uncontrolled, and that lack of control was the magic. It wasn't polished, it wasn't quiet, it was emotional in a way television rarely allowed. Viewers didn't just watch contestants anymore, they imagined themselves in their place. They practiced reactions at home. They dreamed about hearing their name called. That emotional connection turned the show into a cultural fixture, something families watched together, something predictable in an unpredictable world. But behind that joy sat an increasingly complex machine. Games were measured down to the inch. Props were weighted with precision. Probabilities were calculated and recalculated. Nothing was random, even when it looked like chaos. Every spin, every drop, every bounce was designed to feel fair while staying within strict limits. That balance was delicate, and the more precise the system became, the more obvious its failures would be. Because when something finally did go wrong, even slightly, it stood out immediately. And when millions are watching, even the smallest flaw can shake everything. He didn't just host the show, he embodied it. His voice set the tone. His presence reassured viewers that everything was fair, everything was under control. Contestants relaxed around him. Executives leaned on him. For millions of people, he was the show. But power changes dynamics, especially when it goes unchallenged. Behind the camera, the atmosphere shifted slowly. Lines blurred. Authority became unquestioned. When someone holds the spotlight long enough, silence starts to feel safer than resistance. Complaints didn't explode into headlines. They lingered in whispers, in closed offices, in careers that quietly stalled. When accusations finally surfaced, they didn't arrive all at once. They came gradually, carefully, quietly. And when they did, the contrast was jarring. The man associated with fairness was now linked to fear. The smiling host on screen stood in sharp contrast to the stories unfolding behind it. Lawsuits dragged on for years. Legal battles drained time, money, and health. Careers ended not with applause, but with settlement papers. Voices that spoke up were pushed out, while others learned to stay silent. Yet on screen, nothing appeared to change. The show went on. The music played. The wheels spun, exactly as it always had. That's the unsettling power of television. It's very good at hiding discomfort behind bright colors and familiar routines. Viewers saw consistency, stability, comfort. They didn't see the tension that lived just off camera. And by the time the host finally stepped away, the damage had already been done. Trust had been shaken, people had been hurt, but the show survived, again. Because the machine was bigger than any one person, even the one who once seemed inseparable from it.
Replacing an icon is never easy. Every smile is compared, every joke is measured against memory. Every mistake feels larger than it really is. The new host didn't just inherit a job, he inherited decades of expectation, nostalgia, and scrutiny. At first, audiences weren't sure what to think. The energy felt different. The tone was looser, more casual. Some welcomed the change, others resisted it. When a show runs long enough, familiarity becomes sacred, and even small shifts can feel uncomfortable. Over time, that discomfort faded. Familiarity returned. The rhythm settled. On screen, things looked fine, but behind the scenes, pressure was building again. Schedules slept, tensions grew, small frustrations stacked on top of each other. What viewers interpreted as playful moments sometimes masked exhaustion and strain. And frustration, when left unchecked, has a way of spreading. Staff whispered, crew members quietly moved on, longtime workers who had survived previous eras began to leave. Once again, the image presented to the audience didn't fully match the reality behind it. No one was calling it a crisis, not yet, but something felt off. The easy joy that once defined the show now felt more fragile, carefully maintained, like something that could crack under enough weight. History wasn't repeating itself exactly. The faces were different, the circumstances had changed, but the pattern felt familiar. Power, pressure, silence, the same forces rearranged. And for a show built on the idea of fairness, even the hint of imbalance was dangerous. It started like any other win, a good drop, then another, then another. The audience cheered, but behind the scenes, excitement gave way to unease. Probability doesn't bend easily, and 3 perfect outcomes in a row on a game designed to avoid perfection made the math impossible to ignore. That's when alarms went off, quietly. Producers knew the numbers, they knew the odds, and they knew something was wrong. Panic didn't erupt, it couldn't. Instead, chaos was handled with precision. Cameras stopped rolling, lights dimmed, voices dropped to whispers. Every move was calculated, not to fix the problem, but to contain it. The truth, when it surfaced, was almost embarrassing. A shortcut taken weeks earlier, a detail overlooked, a simple mistake no one thought to double-check. No conspiracy, no malicious intent, just human error. But intent didn't matter, because intent doesn't protect you from federal law. Game shows are governed by strict rules for a reason. History had already proven what happens when those rules are broken. The decision to let the contestant keep her winnings wasn't generosity, it was survival, a legal shield, a way to prevent a small mistake from becoming a public disaster. When the episode finally aired, the audience saw none of it. No interruption, no panic, no fear, just a clean, controlled narrative. Because sometimes the most dangerous moments in television aren't the ones filled with drama. They're the ones that never make it to air at all. On this show, language isn't just presentation, it's law. Every sentence spoken on camera carries weight, because once a prize is described out loud, it becomes legally binding. A single mispronounced word, an incorrect model number, or a casually phrased description can turn into a financial nightmare. If a host announces the wrong prize, the show is required to honor it, even if the error costs tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. There are no takebacks, no edits, no quiet corrections after the fact. What the audience hears becomes the contract. That pressure turns every taping into a minefield. Producers rehearse prize descriptions obsessively, lawyers monitor scripts, crew members triple-check cue cards, because one small slip can erase months of profit in seconds. And those are just the visible risks. Then there's the part viewers rarely think about: what happens after the win. Cars, luxury vacations, and high-end electronics come with a hidden price tag. Taxes, registration fees, shipping costs, insurance. The government treats prizes as income, and the bill often arrives before the excitement fades. Some winners discover they owe thousands before they've even taken possession of what they won. That's when fantasy collides with reality. Contestants are forced to decide whether to accept the prize and the debt that comes with it, or walk away entirely. It's a choice no cheering crowd prepares you for. The show sells dreams, but the paperwork tells a different story. Winning feels magical in the moment. The consequences come quietly later. When the bid was revealed, the reaction wasn't celebration, it was silence. The number matched perfectly. Not close, not rounded, but exact, down to the final dollar. In a game built on estimates, instinct, and educated guesses, perfection wasn't a miracle, it was a threat. Producers immediately knew the odds. The math behind the game was designed to prevent exact outcomes. Prices fluctuate, variations are intentional. Absolute accuracy wasn't impossible, but it was statistically alarming. The room froze as calculations were rechecked in real time. Cameras kept rolling, but behind the smiles, concern spread fast. The fear wasn't that someone had cheated, it was that the system looked breakable. If perfection could happen once, it could raise questions every time it happened again. Viewers might assume manipulation. Regulators might investigate patterns. Trust, the most fragile currency in television, could erode instantly. So changes followed, quietly. Pricing structures were adjusted. Game mechanics were altered. Certain combinations were eliminated entirely, not because rules had been broken, but because certainty itself had become dangerous. In a show designed to feel random, predictability undermined the illusion. The audience saw a legendary moment. Behind the scenes, it was treated like a warning shot. Perfection wasn't celebrated, it was contained. Because once viewers start questioning whether outcomes are truly organic, the entire premise collapses. In this world, being too right is sometimes worse than being wrong. Despite decades of scandals, lawsuits, quiet corrections, and near catastrophes, the show endures. Not because it's flawless, but because it's familiar. In a world saturated with chaos, unpredictability, and constant change, familiarity feels like safety. The rules are simple, the format is known, the music hasn't changed much, and for a moment, nothing else matters. People don't tune in to analyze probabilities or legal risks. They watch to relax, to guess along from the couch, to imagine themselves hearing their name called. It's comfort television, a ritual passed down through generations. Parents watched it, grandparents watched it. Now their kids do too. That emotional attachment is powerful. It allows audiences to forgive cracks they'd never tolerate elsewhere. Scandals fade, hosts change, controversies surface and disappear, but the core experience remains untouched. Spin the wheel, guess the price, win or lose, applaud, repeat. Yet that's why every mistake feels so unsettling, because when something built on trust stumbles, it shakes more than a show, it shakes a shared memory. Behind the bright colors and smiling faces is a machine that must work perfectly every time. No errors, no ambiguity, no doubt. And when it doesn't, the danger isn't financial, it's emotional. Millions are watching, not just for entertainment, but for reassurance. And the moment that reassurance cracks, everyone notices.